Good morning, everybody. Welcome in. This is FSM Football Sunday live on Periscope. He's Justin Fensterman. He's the host of Wake Up Fantasy Sports on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio every Saturday morning starting at 6 a.m. East Coast time. He's also the outstanding fantasy analyst over at fantasyalarm.com. My name is Ben Heisler. I am the Director of Media Operations here at Fantasy Sports Markets, the fastest growing new DFS site without the constraints of salary caps. We will get into part of the reason why you should play with us, because we're awesome and there's no salary caps, so you can play the guys that you want. And we have contests that include Chiefs and Rams. That's another reason to get involved. So, Fensty, first of all, good morning, bud. It's good to have you with us. And there's some injury news that we got to get to as the show starts. By the way, I should say, before we get to you, as I continue to ramble on and on and on, we are here to take your questions and answer your lineup concerns. So just go ahead and shoot them to us. They will show up on our page. We'll bring them to you. As the show continues, we are here for the next hour to go through the Week 11 slate and to answer your questions. Fensty, the floor is yours.
Well, Ben Heisler, first of all, let's confirm right now you are awesome, and you're so money you don't even know. But the one thing we know that's not money related is FSM contests right there.
There you
know,
go.
like we talked about with NBA Live, you want to trade, you want to get the best positions possible, the highest rated players, you can do that on FSM, and that's why I love that concept right there. So, Ben, some of the injury news that's going on around the NFL, we teased it before. A.J. Green, he was out, expected to be out, but now, according to Ian Rappaport, he will go through warmups and possibly play. So now it's more of a doubtful tag, Ben. So that definitely breaks a lot of hearts, because you want to start A.J. Green if he's out there because he's A.J. Green, but a very hobbled A.J. Green, why would the Bengals even do that?
I don't know. I think just because they're starting to look at their season and say to themselves, if we don't start winning now, the playoffs at one point seemed like it was going to be inevitable, right? They were 5-1 to start the year, on top of the AFC North, and things have gone very sour for them. They fired their defensive coordinator. They've given up 500 yards in their last 3 games. This is a serious concern. So yes, it would be great for fantasy owners to know, hey, I drafted A.J. Green late in the first round, maybe early second round. I'd love for him to be able to go. The reality is that, Cincinnati needs him. You saw how decimated that offense was. Even with somebody like Tyler Boyd, who's been a legitimate wide receiver 2 this year, at times even a borderline wide receiver 1 in PPR, man, his target share just got depressed. And Joe Mixon wasn't able to establish the run. A.J. Green makes that offense go. It's not Andy Dalton. It's not Joe Mixon. It's A.J. Green. So if Cincinnati realizes, even if we have him at 70, 80%, that might be enough for us to be able to do something against a tough divisional matchup.
You know, Ben, you were saying this last week, is that A.J. Green's numbers are actually not good at all, or rather Andy Dalton's numbers are not good at all when A.J. Green
They're terrible.
is on the field. And, you touted that correctly, Ben, because we were both worried about Tyler Boyd. But when you made that comment last week, and again, this is why you need to listen to our analysis every week, through our content and through our debating back and forth, you come up with some really good nuggets there, and that's why I didn't start Tyler Boyd in any of my dailies. I will say this, though, Ben, that John Ross, who is questionable with a groin injury, is expected to play. So seeing that note right there makes me a little bit more on the side that A.J. Green is not going to play.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, just knowing that his availability is there. You're spot on there. What about the other situation? It was a game that we teased a little bit earlier on today. The inevitable situation of what's going on right now on the Baltimore side. Ian Rappaport just confirmed that Lamar Jackson's going to start, but there are also reports that RG3 could also be getting some opportunities as well. I love Lamar Jackson if he is the bona fide starter moving forward. I think, Fency, he could win you your fantasy league because of his rushing upside. The question is for this week, when everybody's going to be looking and seeing Lamar Jackson, and that's, on the salary sites, he's dirt cheap. At FSM, you don't have to worry about it, but the rushing upside is there, except if he's not going to be in the game the entirety of the time. Can you trust him today?
It's very hard to trust him. However, being that they're essentially against the Bengals, who you can run all day on, I think, for instance, Alex Collins is going to have a huge day. Maybe you do take a swipe on Lamar Jackson. Maybe you do take a shot on him because of that. Now for the season, Ben, Joe Flacco is only expected to miss a week or two reports are saying he doesn't need hip surgery or anything like that, so that's good. But at the same time, at least for this week, you can run on the Bengals. So if you want to take a shot at Lamar Jackson, go for it.
Yeah, I think if this is sort of the situation where you're trying to find some sort of value over the course of this, this is the direction that you want to go in. But it's a really interesting week.
Though, Robert Griffin III, on the snaps that he's going to be in, do you think that they're going to have packages where Lamar Jackson serves as the running back?
I think everything is in play for him. Ravens are sort of in the same situation as Cincinnati, right? They are desperate. They need to get wins, really at any point in this process. So they need to get involved from the very beginning. So I think they're going to use Lamar Jackson in whatever way is best to help them get going, for them to be able to just get some wins on the board. So they need to use him in rushing formations. They need to use him in a wildcat. So yeah, I think he's viable. But it does also make me nervous knowing that there are a couple other cash game quarterbacks that might be a lot more safe. But the upside is always going to be there with Lamar. It's just a question of how much is he going to be on the field. That's my biggest concern.
Right, and the other thing we'll have to realize that with Lamar Jackson, with that rushing ability that you were just talking about, plus Alex Collins, who, again, expecting to have a big day, I'm probably not going to go with any of the Ravens receivers in daily, Ben. I'm probably just going to stay away. And even in my seasonal leagues, I'm likely to bench Michael Crabtree.
Yeah, and Crabtree's one of the guys that you can typically trust for a decent floor week in and week out. I mean, he's not going to do anything special. I mean, that's John Brown. And listen, Lamar Jackson's got the arm strength to be able to hit him from anywhere on the field. The problem is that if you watched in the preseason, Jackson was all over the place with his mechanics. Throwing the football right now is not his strength. It's being able to make plays with his feet, be able to extend plays at the line of scrimmage. And I think he's going to be great. Like, I believe in Lamar Jackson's ability, and frankly, I'm surprised that he went as late as he did. I figured Baltimore actually was a really intriguing spot, and, you know, I was talking about this with Eric Edholm, the outstanding writer of Pro Football Weekly, earlier this week, because we were talking about the young quarterbacks of the last couple of years and talking about Mahomes and Trubisky and Deshaun Watson, and we talked about the impact that Lamar Jackson could have down the road. And you should think about it from this perspective. Baltimore's offense is set up tailor-made for him, with all the different tight ends, athletic tight ends, to be able to protect him and then be able to split out. He can dump it off to them. They have playmaking wide receivers. They have guys that can move the chains. You know, there's a lot of options for Lamar Jackson. It's just a question of, A, whether or not that coaching staff stays intact, and B, how much are they going to give him free reign to be able to go? If Baltimore realizes that this is their best chance to win, like, do you think Baltimore's best chance to win is with Lamar Jackson or with Joe Flacco moving forward?
I think it's still with Joe Flacco.
You do? Okay, because I'm not sure if I do.
Part of the thing is, and I talked to multiple Ravens fans about this, even one of my friends, Phil Backert, who you know very well,
sure,
knows the team inside and out. He was saying, you know, with Harbaugh's job on the line, you know, I think it's almost crazy that they're starting Lamar over Robert Griffin III because of the experience factor. So I really think that because of that factor, outside of the fantasy realm and reality, I'm thinking that they're going to try to get Joe Flacco in there as soon as they can.
Interesting call. All right, let's get to some of your guys' lineup questions. You can send them in right here on Periscope, and we will answer them for you. Let's start with P. DeSantis25. He says, injuries and bye weeks are killing me, so I need one of these 3.5
They're killing all of us.
I know. We're all in that struggle together. So does he go with Ito Smith, with Adams with Philadelphia, or Theo Riddick?
Wow. So immediately, I'm probably taking Ito Smith out of the discussion.
I am too.
Right. Now, with the situation with Detroit, you know, you can look at the receiving options that they don't have. Marvin Jones is not going to play. So you've got Kenny Golladay, who's going to see number one coverage. This could actually set up to help Theo Riddick's production today because of that. They have unproven talent outside of that. I thought a few weeks ago that Brandon Powell was immediately going to take over right after Golden Tate was traded, and he didn't. Michael Roberts, we've seen him have one good week, and TJ Jones, who I really can't trust at all. So seeing those are the other options, I don't mind Riddick being one of those options.
Riddick, I think, is a fantastic play this week. I'm really excited about what he's going to be able to do with no Marvin Jones. And listen, I'm a big Marvin Jones guy, and I expected that during the second half of the season, both him and Golladay would be able to take off, knowing the amount of targets that were coming their way. But with no Marvin Jones today, that's going to open up a lot for Theo Riddick. They played him in the slot last week. They used him in the receiving game. I think he had 6 catches for 60 yards. To me, that probably makes the most sense out of anybody. Ito Smith might vulture a touchdown, and you know Dallas is one of those teams where you can move on them a little bit. I know their defense has been improved, and I actually kind of look at Dallas and Atlanta. We'll get to this in a little bit as a really sneaky upside play that I don't think a lot of people are going to be on because it's like the 7th highest over-under on the slate. It's not one of those games that screams huge, big point score, and with Dallas moving the ball slowly, that's a potential concern too. But I'm with you there. I think Theo Riddick is probably the safest play, even only in half-point PPR, just because I feel like he's going to be the most involved today.
Right, and with Josh Adams, as much as I want to go with Josh Adams, I think the Eagles are going to be in the air for most of this game. Part of the reason is I think that, and this is what we talked about most weeks with the Saints, I think the Eagles are another team that's going to be playing from behind, and so they're going to have to keep up with Drew Brees and that high-powered offense, which it's been great this season. Shocker, Drew Brees. Josh Adams, I don't think is going to get as much volume because of that.
I'm with you there, too. Our buddy Seth is checking in. He wants to know whether you go with Lamar Jackson or Ryan Fitzpatrick in a 6-point passing touchdown league. To me, if it's 6-point touchdown, I think that makes it a very obvious play. And I think even with the rushing upside of Lamar Jackson, I would prefer Fitzmagic in this game.
I agree with you. You know Fitzmagic, whether he throws 5 picks or he throws 5 touchdowns, he is going to be throwing a lot. So I agree with you on that, Ben. Want to ask you a quick question, though?
Yeah.
Do you think because you can run on the Giants, do you think that Peyton Barber is a little bit sneaky today?
I have a really hard time playing Peyton Barber.
We can't believe in him, but the matchup is good, and we have to take recency bias away.
Yeah, I don't like playing Peyton Barber, and that was my guy too. Like Peyton Barber was the guy that I was all in on at the beginning of the season. I thought the volume and the opportunity and the Bucs offense would be much improved. I liked the fact that he was getting all the carries and the opportunities on third down because Ronald Jones didn't know what the hell he was doing.
No.
So I was like, all right, like I'm gonna get this guy. He's gonna be super cheap in auctions. I can probably get him in the 8th or the 9th round. I saw him go average draft position in the 5th or the 6th round. So I felt like I was getting a steal. And then every week that I didn't play him, that would be the week that you either get the end zone or go above 60 yards. Every other week, just bupkis. So yes, he's in play, but I think there are several better options, especially on the daily side.
We'll say this while we're talking about the Bucs very quickly, and that's that Chris Godwin, who is questionable, expected to play in this game.
Yeah, and Godwin, interestingly enough, is a strange scenario. I think a lot of people might be chasing the points with him this week in daily because he led the team in receptions last week. I think he had 7 catches, 107 yards. But he played the least amount of snaps out of anybody on this team. If we're going to dive into that matchup, and I see there's another question from Seth. Don't forget, guys, continue to get your lineup questions in with us. We are here with you guys until 10 o'clock Central Time today, 11 o'clock out east. Here on FSM Football Sunday. The other component about this game is that I feel like it could be a bounce back for a lot of different guys. Certainly on the Giants side, the matchup is fantastic because you're going up against Tampa. You know what quarterbacks have done against them. You know what wide receivers have done against them as well. But Barkley kind of sort of folds into that perfect mold of a wide receiver that's also a running back because he's going to catch so many passes. Like Barkley to me is your cash lock of the day. Like he has to be in all your lineups, especially on FSM. But I think it'd be a bounce back spot for Mike Evans too, even if the cornerback matchup isn't good, because he's getting a ton of targets and because at some point like that talent is going to break through. So I don't know how you feel about Mike Evans today, but I'm certainly going to have exposure to him in some places.
I've not started Mike Evans once in daily this year.
Interesting.
It's not. It's just the trust factor is there. He just doesn't excite me like he used to. Now, you're absolutely right, Ben. This game total is 53.5. And there's going to be a lot of points scored. Mm-hmm. So I have no problem trusting Mike Evans. But you're asking me for my honest opinion here. I have not put Mike Evans in one daily lineup this year.
Do you like the matchup for him at least?
Yes. Okay. I do.
I also but then I understand your frustration because he's frustrated a lot of fantasy owners throughout the course of the year. Another one from Seth is, I can't believe I'm asking this, but in a standard league, do I go with John Brown or Doug Martin? Yeah, most of the time you would go John Brown and feel perfectly fine about it. He's been that good this year. But Doug Martin actually has a decent matchup today against Arizona, assuming assuming they don't stack the box, Fensty, with 7, 8, 9 guys saying like, okay, Derek Carr, Seth Roberts, Brandon LaFell, we dare you to beat us. And they perfectly could, but I think Martin, based on his volume, is probably going to get a decent amount of carries today, and they're throwing to him in the backfield. It's not just Rashard anymore.
Yep, and you're right about that. And because of the lack of receiving options, I mean, the Raiders are just terrible. Terrible. I don't care which receiving options are in and out. They've been terrible. And I agree with you, Ben, that both these running backs could be productive because they're pretty much out of options outside of Cook at this point. And I'm talking legit options. LaFell has been somewhat productive, and you know he'll be involved. But I agree with you, Ben, that if there's any week that you're going to look to start Doug Martin, it is this week. He's seeing, and I'm doing quick math in my head, about 35% of the snaps, at least last matchup. So because of that, you know, it's bye weeks and injuries. I don't hate it. So Doug Martin, I'm going there.
I think Doug Martin is probably the way to go. Let me ask you a question about that game while we're on the subject. And by the way, for those of you guys that are watching with us right here on FSM Football Sunday, don't forget you can send us your questions. We're going to be here up until 10 o'clock. Also, for those of you guys that are playing on Fantasy Sports Markets today, we're putting up a promo code NFL18 if you guys are new to the show. What that promo code will do is when you go to register over at fantasysportsmarkets.com, as Fensty types in he gets his little spinach smoothie. It's like your Kermit with the tea, just like.
I was trying to be sneaky.
No, it didn't work. It's good stuff, by the way. I've been copying you.
Love that, man.
Yeah, little spinach, gala apple, a little bit of OJ, some ginger, ice. It's fantastic.
Dude, I want you to be healthy. We care about your health on this show.
Right, yeah, especially when you're dealing with stress of putting together lineups. We want to try and ease the stress, get you your morning juice and smoothie. We're here for you guys. But promo code NFL18 when you guys go to fantasysportsmarkets.com, you type it in, and that will get you $5 on us. And there's plenty of contests that you can throw that into. There's the $5 contest for today, for Sunday only. $50 to first place. Again, perfect roster bonus upwards of about $25,000. I think there's maybe about a total of $160,000 up for grabs today just for the NFL. We have Thursday through Monday contests, which are available still. On the other sites, if you want access to the Rams and the Chiefs for Monday Night Football, typically it's not there anymore because you missed the opportunity to get it on Thursday. For us, it's still available. You just don't have access to the players that played on Thursday. So you don't have Packers players and you don't have Seahawks players. So if you want exposure to Rams and Chiefs, you can do that. Available at fantasysportsmarkets.com. It is there for you. Fancy, we were talking about the Oakland-Arizona game, which if you were just watching it as a football fan, you'd probably throw up a little bit in your mouth. But there is a little bit of fantasy goodness, and especially with what we've seen out of David Johnson the last couple weeks, I'm a little bit more intrigued as to what he's going to do. Here's the thing, though, about David Johnson. Last couple weeks, not as many guys were on him. This week against Oakland, at home, everyone's going to be on him. This is one of the first games Arizona's been favored this year. So, are you going to fade the chalk with David Johnson, or are you going to be all over him?
No, I'm going to be all over him. I'm thinking he's getting in the end zone at least twice. So I'm thinking it's a 2-touchdown game for sure for David Johnson. Also going to be on Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk. In fact, I
like Kirk a lot too.
On salaried sites, Christian Kirk will be in about 95% of my lineups.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
It's a great way to get exposure without completely using the chalk with David Johnson.
Right. Right.
And the other thing about Kirk is that I know he let some people down last week. He's still getting average target share of about 6-7 times per game. And Rosen's throwing the ball. Exactly. So at some point he's going to hit value and he's going to exceed it by a ton.
Yep. If you're looking at these rookie quarterbacks, and we've been spending a lot of time even talking about Lamar Jackson, I mean, Josh Rosen has you're seeing that slow improvement and growth throughout the season from Josh Rosen. So I'm a lot more confident in him now. In the Cardinals as a whole, I'm not. Mm-hmm. But it makes me a lot more confident in starting a guy and having a ton of exposure like a Christian Kirk because of what I've seen in terms of the growth from Josh Rosen. It's been very little, but when you're like us and you're watching every single week, you're seeing it through the numbers as well that he is getting used to the NFL pace.
What about from the Oakland side? We've always talked about Doug Martin, him being in play. Do you like Rashard a little bit against Arizona? Is anybody else in play for you? I mean, somebody like Seth Roberts has actually been getting a ton of looks in the red zone. If you're looking at him from any fantasy, from a salary side perspective, he's super cheap. I wouldn't play him at FSM, but is somebody like Seth Roberts in play for you?
Not really. I mean, look, if you're in a desperate diamond situation, you want to go with Seth Roberts, that's fine. But it's, again, been very hard for me to trust this receiving game as a whole. I really don't like Derek Carr. And if there's anyone I'm going to look at, it is Jared Cook. I'm most trustworthy in him because of the familiarity factor. But I feel like if you're looking at which of these wide receiver tight end options are going to get priority coverage, that could end up being Jared Cook. That's what it's come to with the Raiders.
No doubt. I see questions from our guy Sizzle, from Vio Lopes N. We'll get to you guys in just a second. But from at We Keepsy. He said, Scott, I've got one for you guys. Half-point PPR, pick 2. Alex Collins, Dalvin Cook, Alshon Jeffrey, or Mark Ingram. I really like Alex Collins today. Especially with RG3 and Lamar Jackson. I think it's going to open up the running game for him. And assuming that one of these guys is the quarterback the rest of the season, I'm still hoping it's Lamar Jackson. I think this opens up a lot for Alex Collins down the stretch. I think they can run the option with him. I think they're going to use him a little bit more. I think we're going to see a little bit less Buck Allen. So I'm probably considering Collins for sure. And then we have to narrow it down between Cook, Jeffrey, and Ingram. You
worried about Ty Montgomery at all?
Not yet. I feel like if they give me a reason to worry about Tymont, then I will. I think a lot of people are like, well, they don't trust Alex Collins. That's why they're using Buck Allen. I just think sort of their mindset was to just use both guys, keep them fresh. They like Buck Allen in passing situations, and they were throwing a ton with Flacco. If he's not in there, I think things change. So I prefer Collins. I think they know that they can ride him down the stretch like they did last year. Now, Dalvin Cook had that big run last week, but he wasn't completely healthy. And he has a tough matchup on the road against Chicago, but, it is a cold game. They might try and ground and pound it against the Bears defense. Jeffrey's in a great spot, actually, even if he gets the Marshawn Lattimore coverage, just because you're going to have to throw in that game. Maybe purely based on volume, I almost prefer him.
Yep, I agree with you. However, I mean, remember with Dalvin Cook and the Bears is that they'll give up passes to running backs. That's something you're going to have to remember with Dalvin Cook. So, especially if you've held on to him for that long. But like you said, Ben, Alshon Jeffrey has an incredible matchup here. I think the ceiling's a bit higher, so I'm fine with going Jeffrey. It's a very tough decision between the two.
So you would go Collins and Jeffrey?
Yes.
How do you feel about Mark Ingram today?
I feel the same way I do every single week. I don't know if it's going to be a Mark. It's every week. It's when you're in a situation where you've got another running back that's ultra productive like Alvin Kamara. It's hard for me to trust Mark Ingram, especially when you're talking about guys like Dalvin Cook, who will get the bulk of the carries. When you're talking about Alshon Jeffrey, who will get a ton of targets in this game because Lattimore's been beaten so much this year. That with Alex Collins, that even though there are other guys there, he's going to be you got to run on the Bengals, so that's a lock. So because of that, with Mark Ingram, I feel okay with him. The snap percentage makes me a little bit more encouraged with what we've seen. Okay. But again, it's hard to trust him. Yeah. Unless you think the Saints are going to be up, and this is what we talked about. If you think the Saints are going to be up by 3 scores the entire game, which they pretty much were last matchup, then yes, you trust Mark Ingram.
What are the Saints right now in Vegas? They are, the over-under is like 56.5, so I'm trying to get my notes up. This computer is slow.
It's 57.5 right now.
57.5, and they are 7.5-point favorites. So game script would tell you that Mark Ingram will likely be used, but the total's gone up for both teams. The implied total, Eagles have gone up from 23.2 to 24.25. It's jumped. And so I feel like it's more Kamara today, even though Kamara at home has historically been worse than on the road. You target Breeze and you target Michael Thomas inside the Superdome, where their numbers tend to go up. Like, those are both fantastic cash plays today. Right. I just think based on volume, Jeffrey's going to be the guy. And I trust Collins to get the ball in a matchup against Cincinnati that has been really bad against the run and against the pass all season. So those are probably my two guys, even though I feel like Ingram could, of course, vulture a touchdown or two.
So while we're on this matchup, Ben, because we just made our decision with the question here, where do you stand on Golden Tate? Because
I like him this week.
Reports are saying that he's going to be more involved this week. The question is, where will he be lining up? Will it be in the slot or on the outside? That's still the one confusing part of this whole equation.
I like Golden Tate this week. I like Nelson Aguilar more.
I agree.
If he's going to be lined up against P.J. Williams in the slot, then that's a very exploitable matchup. And Aguilar actually, I think, led the team in air yards last week, also led the team in targets. Now, it wasn't a good game for them. It made it interesting in the second half, but I think Aguilar could actually get himself involved. The problem with him is that he's seen decent target share, right? But he just hasn't gotten any yards, and he hasn't gotten to the end zone since the first couple weeks of the season. If they're going to win, they're going to need to be able to exploit that matchup in the slot. And I think Aguilar can do that. I do think Golden Tate will get a little bit more involved, though. Like, I could see Wentz sort of spreading it around, multiple guys getting 5-6 targets today. I think we go Jeffrey. I think we go Collins. So we keep seeing. Why? Can I ask you a question? Why is everybody making their? I'm going to sound like Larry David for a second, but it's Twitter, and it's Instagram, and it's Periscope. Like, why is it so hard to read? Weep Kepsy? How would you say this? Wheepkesy.
Weepkesy.
Weepkesy. Okay, that's fine.
Weepkesy.
All right. Let's get to another one. This is for a little bit easier. It's from Sizzle, which is SIZ _ZLE. Half-point PPR flex between John Brown, Sterling Shepard, or Theo Riddick.
Oof. Very similar question to the one we just received. I love Sterling Shepard so much.
I do too. Okay, that makes it easy.
Do. Yeah, again, with Joe Flacco not being under center, it's really hard for me to go in on these receiving weapons. Mm-hmm. Whereas I know Sterling Shepard is in an amazing matchup where he'll see second most coverage to Odell Beckham Jr. and maybe third if you include Saquon. You're looking at 2 touchdown guys this week. How isn't Sterling Shepard in the conversation?
He's fantastic in this matchup. He's got a nice schedule down the stretch as well. Shepard's been getting consistent target volume, especially with, if you noticed this from Pat Shurmur last week, it was Eli was getting the ball out fast, and they realized, look, he holds on the ball. It's one of his bigger weaknesses that he'll just hold it and he'll be a little bit too conservative. Like, well, if he's going to be a conservative quarterback, if he's not going to take a ton of shots, let's at least just get the ball out quick, put it in the hands of speed guys like Beckham and Barkley and Shepard that can make plays happen. They did that last week, especially in the second half. They looked a lot better. So I'm with you. Shepard again. It's Tampa Bay's defense. We've seen this movie before. All year, they have looked atrocious. They can't stop anybody. Their injuries, they've been decimated. And so I think Shepard in this situation presents a much better matchup for him.
Agreed.
What about on the other side? Are you going to be in on Tampa Bay today? Especially the fact that I think Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator, is calling plays again. For whatever reason, Dirk Cutter said last week he wanted to take the play calling back. And Fitzpatrick still threw for over 400 yards, but they didn't get into the end zone once. So it almost looks like they're trying to rectify the mistakes that he made from last week. Do you have interest in anybody from Tampa Bay? Do you have interest in Fitzpatrick?
I have interest in not only Fitzpatrick, but I have interest in O.J. Howard as well for tight end.
That's your guy.
I don't think he's going to be owned a lot. And looking at previous matchups and everything, you've been able to produce against the Giants with tight ends. And also last year, O.J. Howard did great as well. So with O.J. Howard, that's someone that I'm going to look to trust. I think he's got one of the better tight end matchups of the week. You asked me about Mike Evans before. I do trust Mike Evans today. Now, I thought about some of the other guys on that.
You going to play him, though? You might trust him. Are you going to play him?
You know what? I'll play him in a lineup today. Might as well.
I don't want to, force you. I don't want to, peer pressure you into playing Mike Evans.
You're peer pressuring me, so I guess I got to go with the peer pressure, Ben. Thanks for being a great influence. But it's Mike Evans we're talking about here. Right. So, and it's a good matchup. But if you're asking me what guy that I will likely have in my lineups, O.J. Howard is the one I look for. I rarely start Ryan Fitzpatrick. Again, I don't mind it because I know he's going to throw. But if anything, I might look at Eli.
Yeah, he'll for as good of a matchup as he has, he'll have really low ownership because nobody likes playing Eli.
No.
Next week, I'm going to peer pressure you into playing Tajay Sharp.
No.
I played him.
Actually, I've actually have played him once this season, and he scored a touchdown that week.
Right, there you go. Hey, look who's checking in. It's little brother. Hey, morning, gentlemen. Anthony Miller or Calvin Ridley today? Well, first of all, I'm a little insulted because I answered this question for him yesterday, and clearly he values your opinion far more than mine.
Wait, can I guess what your answer was?
I said Calvin Ridley.
Okay, so I guess I can't guess what your answer was. So Calvin.
I thought you said I can. Can you tell me?
No,
what your answer
I want to play a guessing game with you.
Sorry, I missed that.
He pulled the carpet out from under me. Calvin Ridley would be my guy for this matchup too.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm thinking that, and Ben, you were mentioning this earlier, and I think this is something we need to talk about a little bit more. This is going to be a high-scoring affair today from both sides.
I'm with you.
It's a great day for Ezekiel Elliott, for all of the receiving options, and Austin Hooper from the Atlanta side. It's a great situation from them. When I'm looking at the lines here, we were talking about that earlier, I'm really considering taking the over. It's at 49 right now. I'm going to take the over on this game.
I am too. Yeah, I think this is a sneaky game. I guess maybe it's not so sneaky if you and me and a lot of the other people in the fantasy industry believe it's going to be a high-scoring game. In doing the podcast this week with Elliot Christ over at the Quan Edge, we were talking about the disparity between Matt Ryan at home, 15 touchdowns on the season, versus Matt Ryan on the road, only 7. His average pass attempts per play go about 3 yards longer at home versus on the road. And the Falcons' total score, them and their opponent, ends up being about 20 points higher in the Mercedes-Benz Dome than it is away from there. For whatever reason, and I don't know whether it's just the climate-controlled environment, it works out better for Matt Ryan each and every week. So whenever he's there, the numbers go up. When he's on the road, it looks bad. And there's going to be not a lot of ownership on him because, A, on the salary sites, he's still somewhat expensive. I think he's certainly in play over at Fantasy Sports Markets as a super contrarian-type quarterback. And listen, it'd be tough to not play somebody like Drew Brees today in that kind of a matchup. But I think Matt Ryan is certainly in play. I know that the corners for Dallas match up well, and maybe it's not an ideal situation for Julio, but I think I want exposure to this game, and if I'm playing tournaments, I love Matt Ryan and Julio today. And for Andrew's question, I think Ridley is absolutely in play if you expect this game to be high scoring.
He won't see the top corner, so because of that,
yep.
I agree with that as well. So I'll go Ridley there, Andrew. Also, Ben, I got to ask you, on salaried sites, I'm on DraftKings now. Amari Cooper is 5,400 in an incredible matchup. I mean, if there's somebody you're going to trust in this passing game, it's got to be him.
Yeah, on the salary sites, Dak is probably one of the top cash game quarterbacks. I don't love him. I think I'd rather have exposure to Elliott if I can, just because I know how exploitable the matchup is against the Falcons on the ground. Right. And they're using Elliott. I think he's already on pace to break his season-long record for pass receptions for a running back for his career. So I think I'd rather have exposure to Elliott as opposed to Dak and Amari Cooper, but both of them are certainly in play, and you can take the savings if you're playing on the salary site somewhere else. I think that's more than reasonable.
I agree with you, too, on that.
A little bit past the bottom of the hour, give you a reminder once again over at Fantasy Sports Markets. For those of you guys that have not played DFS at FantasySportsMarkets.com, we are a non-salary DFS site, meaning you can play all the guys that you want to play. If you want to stack up Chiefs and Rams, you can do that. If you want to stack up with all the New Orleans Saints guys against the Eagles, all of them are available to you because you don't have to worry about how much they cost. So if you look at the screen right now over at FantasySportsMarkets.com, if you type in the promo code when you register, NFL18, that'll get you $5 on us to be able to use in any of your lineups. So whether it be, we 5 $1 games or 1 $5 game, you can use it towards a $10 game. They're all up for grabs for you, and you can save yourself $5 without a deposit required over at FantasySportsMarkets.com. Fensty, I have a Beat Benny Heist contest each and every week, and I have an initial lineup in there right now, but to be honest, for a lot of those people that are playing that are using the promo code NFL18, I'm concerned. People have been stepping up their game a little bit. Had a couple top 2 finishes over the year, but I think last week And, the listeners and the viewers of the show, they got to me, man. I think I finished in 10th out of 25th. It was tough.
You got to step your game up then.
I know. I think the problem was that I played too much chalk. I got a little risk averse, and that's not how you got to win these games. You got to take some chances.
Too good, Benny Heiss.
Figure it out. Let me ask you about a game that has a little bit of intrigue for me. I'm trying to figure out what to do with Houston and Washington today. Because right now the total is not particularly pretty. It's 41.5. The Texans, though, are one of the hottest teams in the NFL. They're coming off a bye, so they're well-rested. Deshaun Watson is finally starting to run again and look like the quarterback one that we expected him to be. No Will Fuller, obviously. He's done for the year. Demaryius Thomas now has a second week into the offense, but really a third week based on that bye. And Kiki Kute in the slot actually matches up fairly well. On the other side for Washington, you can move the ball against Houston, but the problem is I don't know who Washington's throwing to anymore. And if they're going to throw, is it going to go more than 5 yards? Is there anybody in this game that you're particularly intrigued by? Because I think there is one name for me.
I mean, Demaryius Thomas seems like the safest option for me. Also, Lamar Miller. I love Lamar Miller today.
Okay.
He's going to be in a few of my daily lineups. I think you can run on Washington. It's funny, we were talking about Peyton Barber, and I was watching a lot of Peyton Barber against the Redskins. And when I'm seeing Peyton Barber being able to just cut through that line like I saw, it makes me a lot more confident in starting running backs versus the Washington Redskins. And I think Lamar Miller is in a very good spot today.
Yeah, I think Lamar Miller is an interesting play. I think people are sleeping on Hopkins today.
Can you ever sleep on Hopkins?
Yeah, I think people do. I really think people do because they see Antonio Brown and they see Odell Beckham and Julio Jones and Michael Thomas. And then he becomes like the fifth or the sixth talked about wide receiver, and he's in play every week for cash. I certainly think he's in play for tournaments this week, and I think he's going to have suppressed ownership because people are just not going to buy in, or they're going to buy in on some of the other receivers this week.
Besides Michael Thomas, he should be the second most talked about receiver every single week.
After Antonio Brown? You said after Michael Thomas.
Even after Michael Thomas, before Antonio Brown. I think Hopkins has been that dominant this year.
He's been awesome, and I love him this week. And, I think that's going to be a really intriguing matchup for the current situation over on the Houston and the Colts. I'm trying to get some of these questions to load up. This is from Mike over on Twitter at MikeWait1978. Non-PPR league, I get to pick two between Alex Collins, Marlon Mack, or Kenny Galladay. Who do I go with?
I'm going with Alex Collins here.
Even in PPR?
Even in PPR.
I don't know if I can do it.
I want to trust Kenny Galladay, but he's going to be shadowed heavily today, Ben. They're going to make the other no-name receivers beat them.
I just think Galladay is going to get so much target volume that I have a hard time saying no to him. Did you see that he had 8 targets, Fensty, in the fourth quarter last week?
It's
a good matchup for him, man. And I know that he's missing some targets. I know that Stafford has limited options. I just think they're going to pepper him. Like Galladay feels like a cash game lock for me.
So you know what? Then let's view it like this. Then a higher ceiling is going to be Kenny Galladay because of the targets that you're anticipating. Which look. It's exact. I mean, we just talked about the roster and the other options on there. They don't have many other options on this team. Theo Riddick's not going to fully take away from Kenny Galladay. Neither will Kerryon Johnson. So with that, Ben, I get it. Galladay definitely has, I don't like using the word upside that much, but definitely has that highest upside of a lot of these receivers. I mean, I just love Collins' matchup so much, even in a PPR. I just don't see how it fails us.
I need to break from the action for a second because I just saw a story that came down from Adam Schefter, and I had to double check and make sure that it wasn't a fake Adam Schefter. Did you see who the Browns are interested in interviewing for their head coaching job?
Who?
This is from Adam Schefter. Browns interested in interviewing Condoleezza Rice for head coaching job, source tells ESPN. Listen, I know that she's been involved in, and I know John Dorsey, and I thought this was really cool that he said this. He said, for our next coach, he said it could be a woman. You don't know. And I think a lot of people are like, well, that's interesting. I'm just very intrigued. I don't want to say like what the hell are you doing, or because obviously she's been a leader at the highest level in Washington, but I'm just surprised. I don't know if you have a reaction to it or not.
Would usher in a new era of football. That's for sure.
Here's the real question. Do you think Condoleezza Rice would keep Freddie Kitchens on board? Do you think she would run more of an assault type 3-4 wide receiver set offense? Do you think she played a little bit more conservative because she was part of the Republican Party, Republican conservative? I don't think she would necessarily have a liberal approach to, all the different wide receivers and studs that they have.
I mean, if there's anything, I'm looking at the cabinet right now that she used to work with, and I'm trying to think. I mean, looking to see who would be involved in this. I mean, would Colin Powell be the offensive coordinator? Would George W. Bush come in and work with special teams?
Yeah, I think we got a real good kicker. Joseph, right? Yeah, big fan, and love Baker Mayfield. He beat Texas.
Yes.
That really upset me, but I think Condoleezza's going to do a great job. I think she's going to be a fantastic head coach, and the strategery involved is going to be magnificent.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, I'm sorry. I saw that story and I had to talk about it.
No, understood. This is live breaking news show right here.
Yes, indeed it is. Our guy Petey Dubs is checking in. Haven't heard from him today. He says, need a wide receiver 3. Does he go with Devin Funchess, Maurice Harris, or Cortland Sutton in a PPR league? So Funchess is probably the guy that most weeks I would prefer, knowing that he's the number one option. But, he hasn't really impressed a whole lot this year. In fact, he's let a lot of fantasy owners down. And Darius Slay is going to play today, which is a concern for me. You have Maurice Harris, by the way, in a matchup that I think is intriguing. He's become Alex Smith's go-to wide receiver. The problem is that just because he's become a go-to wide receiver doesn't mean he's going to get anywhere down the field. And then Cortland Sutton is in a tough matchup today with Denver going up against the Chargers on the road. But I think he's the best wide receiver out of all those guys as far as talent goes. So between Funchess, Harris, and Sutton in a PPR league, where do you go here?
I'm still going Devin Funchess.
Okay.
I'm thinking that he's going to have a big week this week. I don't care if Slay is in or not. This defense doesn't exist in Detroit, and that's something that I can't forget. It's when I'm seeing teams dominate them. It's just at some point Funchess is going to have another breakout game, and I think this sets it up for him very nicely. I think also DJ Moore is definitely in play today as well.
I'm tempted to go Harris because it's PPR.
Okay.
And I feel like he'll see the highest number of targets in this game. I just think the sample size has gotten to the point now where, there's no Crowder. Washington's missing so many guys. Smith needs to get the ball out quick. Harris lined up in the slot. They're just using him effectively. And so I feel like he's probably the safest play versus Funchess is probably the higher upside play today. Because he can beat Darius Slay on a 50-50 ball. I don't think that's an issue at all. But I think I'm more likely to lean with somebody like Maurice Harris in this situation.
The targets will be there. And while we're on that game, by the way, Josh Doxson, he's been making waves a little bit, Ben.
He has.
You trust on salaried sites?
I don't know if I ever trust. How you were talking about how you never play Mike Evans. I'm not saying that Josh Doxson is anywhere on his level. I just have such a hard time. I've been burned by him before, and I know that he's getting into the end zone. I just feel like the moment that I play him, he's going to get one target for no yards on the day.
I hear you. I mean, he only got 4 last week, and it should have been more. He did happen to score. He scored in the last 2 weeks. But just an intriguing option. I mean, when looking at this Washington team, they're decimated.
Yeah, absolutely. A game that we haven't really talked a whole heck of a lot about today is a matchup between two teams fighting for a playoff spot in the AFC South, with Tennessee going to the Indianapolis Colts. That game opened at 48. It has since moved up to 50.5. I kind of liked Jacksonville's defense last week coming off a bye against the Colts on the road, and it burned me. Now, they did look better in the second half, Fensty, but I figured with as much as Andrew Luck throws, the fact that Jacksonville still had a chance to win the division, with how good that defense can be, getting some of their guys back. I know they didn't have A.J. Bouye last week, but I was surprised at how awful Jacksonville looked against the pass when that was supposed to be one of their strengths coming into this season. But the Colts are once again going up at home against Tennessee, and we saw them really beat up on the Patriots last week. So are you intrigued by this game at all? Are you going to have exposure? It's a solid over-under, and the total continues to climb.
Right. Now, with this game, I was, when talking about desperate tight ends, Jonnu Smith is someone that I am looking at for a very, very cheap tight end option. Same reason, because he's been scoring touchdowns. So that is someone I'm going to look at. I mean, Corey Davis is Corey Davis, so I could look to trust him. I mean, Dion Lewis, that's someone else that I'm looking at in this matchup. From the Colts side of it, though, the tight end situation scares me because I'd want to go with Ebron, but at the same time, the Titans' defense has been so stingy against tight ends that it's so hard, even if they get targeted, to still trust them before the games begin.
Are you going to be in on Ebron, though? I think a lot of people are going to chase the points from last week with him.
Of course, because they're seeing, wow, he's producing with another tight end in that mix with him, then he must be that great of a tight end. So I will go with Ebron in a couple of lineups, but the Titans are very stingy, like I said.
Yeah, I still think, and I was talking to Elliot about this, and he says, I never play Jack Doyle. And I still think Doyle's going to get the bulk of the target share, and he was playing way more snaps than Ebron.
Right.
Ebron got 3 targets, and he caught 3 touchdowns. It's fantasy.
Yeah, that's how that works sometimes. You want to see more targets, but sometimes those are exclusively red zone.
I'm trying to think, are there any other games that we haven't dived into? And again, we're still waiting for a couple more questions to come in over on the live stream. So send them in if you guys have lineup questions. We are here for you guys.
I got one, Ben.
Yeah.
What about Denver and the Chargers?
Great. I'm glad you brought that up.
We talked about
and I want to talk about the Monday night game too, because that's a fascinating matchup for me as well.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah, Denver going to the Chargers. Chargers defense, probably one of the best plays of the day. Maybe them and Baltimore and Arizona are 3 of my favorites for today. Although I think Denver might cover. 7.5-point spread. The Chargers tend to struggle in games that they absolutely should win outright. I remember them struggling against Oakland a couple weeks ago. There was a massive spread in that game they couldn't cover. Denver coming off a bye against a tough defense, possibly with Joey Bosa back. Like, in theory, it makes perfect sense for the Chargers to just beat the hell out of them, especially with people considering them as the number 2 team in the AFC. But the Chargers have a tendency to Chargers all over themselves, and home games for them aren't really home games. It's in a soccer stadium, and they can't sell it out.
It's not going to stop me from going with Melvin Gordon in a lot of my lineups today.
With how bad Denver's been against the run, yeah, I would agree with you there.
Right. I mean, he's going to produce. That's really the consistent option. And also, there were injury concerns surrounding Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but both were since removed from the report and should play today, no issues.
Okay. Is there anybody on the Denver side that you're intrigued by just because they're going to likely have to throw a bunch today?
Most weeks I would say Cortland Sutton, but besides that, the only other intriguing option is Hireman. That's the really, that's
He's
it.
gotten a ton of targets over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, it's looking at it right now. 11 last week, Ben. That's a tight end. I don't care the matchup. That's a tight end right now on salaried sites. 3,700 on DraftKings. And that's someone that I'm definitely putting in for a punt play.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fair call. And then again, on the Chargers side, I'm with you on Gordon. I think Eckler could always be a punt throw play for you guys as well. I just don't like the receivers this week. Even if Keenan Allen was 100%, it's a tougher matchup against the Denver secondary. I think if you're going to go Gordon here, I think the real question is, where do you put Gordon amongst the echelon of top running backs this week?
That's a very good question, Ben.
For Sunday, let's take Gurley out of it. Is it Gordon 1, Zeke 2, Kamara 3? Those are probably the top 3 guys, right? Where do you rank them?
I'm going to go with Barkley.
Barkley.
Yep, I'm going to go with Barkley 1, Gordon or Elliott 2, Gordon 3, and then David Johnson 4.
Yeah, Johnson has to be. It's such a good matchup for him too.
Right.
I'm probably going Saquon 1. I want to go Elliott 2 only because I know the volume will be there, and sometimes I worry about that for Melvin Gordon. And maybe this is the thing. like Melvin Gordon's volume, like overall total volume in carrying the ball has been down this year, but his receptions have gone up, and that's actually worked out in favor in PPR leagues. So I say I want more volume from Melvin Gordon. In reality, maybe I don't, if that makes sense.
I mean, right now, look, he's still getting, the touches have been consistent for him. He's getting around, I'd say on average, looking at it very quickly, 17, 18 touches alone, which is fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Reasonable.
When you're close to that 20 touch mark, I'm cool with that. But like you said, he's not getting the receptions every single week. But the touchdowns have been coming a lot more because of the receptions.
Right.
So that's helped his overall point total. So I still trust him very much. Again, I love David Johnson today.
It's hard not to like the idea that I've been spending time Fency trying to talk myself out of David Johnson because everyone's going to be on him.
Right.
It just feels so antiquated. It feels so stupid. Like it's like, well, everyone's going to play him. Well, there's a reason everyone's going to play him. Like It's a great matchup against Oakland. They're favored. Game script is involved. That favors Arizona, and Byron Leftwich is using him the right way. I have a hard time chasing points from the week before where David Johnson was so good. And I played him last week because I loved the matchup. And now here I am trying to say, like, well, it's a better matchup, but maybe I shouldn't play him. Like, this is part of the things when it comes to fantasy football strategy that I think a lot of people struggle with, including guys like us. Like, our recency bias is strong and we tend to overthink things. David Johnson is not a guy that you overthink this week.
No. And again, they're going to be utilizing him so much when they get out to that lead. Josh Rosen, I'm telling you, been watching a lot of him. He's improved.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot better.
He's not groundbreaking, but he's improved. And that's why all of a sudden you're seeing Larry Fitzgerald get a little bit more involved. You're seeing Christian Kirk stand out a little bit more. Ricky Seals-Jones, by the way, who we haven't even talked about.
Yeah, he's a great play today.
Also a sneaky play today. This is a week where we're stacking the Cardinals of all teams. But something you just mentioned, Ben, with overthinking and everything, we don't talk nearly enough on our show about Christian McCaffrey.
I'm glad you brought him up because it's another nice matchup for him. And Detroit's actually been good against pass-catching running backs, interestingly enough. But you can run on them. And I know that Snacks Harrison is there to help alleviate some of the stress. But McCaffrey's in a great matchup too, no doubt.
Yep. From the rushing side, he's scored 4 touchdowns from the rushing side in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's absolutely in play.
So he is getting, and that was some of the things that people worried about early, when the draft season with Christian McCaffrey is, will he really get that much volume? He has been.
Yeah.
He has been. The Panthers told us about this before the season, and we just decided not to believe it. We thought it was all lip service and being overhyped, but he's been coming through. Look, he's had games in which the touches have been down this year. He's had back in week 6 and week 7, but since then, 14, 17, and 14, and seeing him also active in the passing game with 5-6 targets steadily per game.
Right.
Gotta love that from him.
Yeah, and I think he's also gotten a similar target share to that of Christian Kirk. He's been on the field a ton. Ricky Seals-Jones should be owned in your fantasy league. Like he's in season-long leagues, he's a viable guy down the stretch of the season, which seems pretty remarkable considering that he didn't do anything before. About 5 minutes left on the show, Fensty. I want to get your thoughts on the Monday night game. Again, a friendly reminder for those of you guys that are just checking in with us now. Welcome in. This is FSM Football Sunday. He's Fensty. I'm Ben. We're with you every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. East Coast time, 9 a.m. Central time for an entire hour. We answer your lineup questions. We go through our favorite matchups on the slate, and towards the end of the show, we'll give you our favorite plays over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. And remember that promo code NFL18. That'll get you $5 on us to use in any of our contests over at fantasysportsmarkets.com, a non-salary cap DFS site with upwards of $160,000 up for grabs in perfect roster bonuses for this week. All right, so the Monday night game, Fensty. Let's go by position really quick. Between Mahomes and Jared Goff, which of the two quarterbacks do you prefer?
I'm going to go with Mahomes.
Okay. I prefer Goff slightly more, but I want to hear your reasons for Mahomes.
Great situation either way.
Yeah, they're both number one, number two.
Yeah, this game's 63. There are going to be a lot of points.
Ton. I like Goff because I think the correlation play whenever opponents score more than 20 points against the Rams, his numbers skyrocket. Like we're talking about an average of 370 yards, 3.5 touchdowns a game. I just know that that's going to happen. I know Kansas City's going to put up 20 on him. And so for that reason, I do feel like back at home, I prefer that play, and I think he'll be lesser owned than Mahomes as well.
Healthier options, too, from the Rams side of things, Ben. I mean, with Watkins, we don't know if he's going to be in. So with that, it's a lot harder to trust the receiving weapons. Besides taking Travis Kelce out, you've got Tyreek Hill. But the Rams have a little bit more from the receiving side.
Gurley probably has to be the number one overall guy, but are you going to play Kareem Hunt at all this week?
I would, again, non-salary, I am going to go Gurley. But yes, I mean, Kareem Hunt has definitely silenced his doubters. I mean, last year with the production, we saw the middle of the season him not produce. This year, it's been very, very different.
Yeah, he's been terrific. It's another good matchup, but I still prefer guys like Barkley and Elliott and Gordon, Kamara, Johnson. Those maybe even James Conner to a certain extent, but I think Kareem Hunt, it's a good environment for him. They'll use them both in the running game and the passing game. Wide receivers. We just talked about injuries. We're not sure about Watkins. Cooper Kupp obviously done for the year with a torn ACL. Are you looking at somebody like Robert Woods, who's more likely to go back in the slot, as something favorable for him because of how often they target the slot receiver, or as a negative because the Chiefs' best corner is Kendall Fuller, who plays in the slot?
I mean, Cooks is still going to be – they're going to have to focus on him still. That's the thing. And you make a great point. I'm still going to trust Robert Woods in this situation. I'm not trusting the tight end options of things.
No.
So with
who do you prefer between Cooks or Woods, if you had to choose one of them?
I'm going to go this week from what you just said. I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks.
Okay, because it's a better matchup on the outside.
Yes.
And then Tyreek Hill, I assume you'll be in on him this week too?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. I can see a situation where Marcus Peters actually turns one and makes a big interception, and he gets his revenge narrative. And then I can also see Tyreek Hill just cooking him, because that's happened all year, and you saw that with Michael Thomas a couple weeks ago. Marcus Peters hasn't been the same as he was from a season ago. And then Kelce, obviously, just another monster matchup. Who do you prefer between Kelce and Ertz this week?
Oh, I thought you were about to ask me between Kelce and the Rams tight ends.
No.
Are you serious?
No, this is a family show.
Yes. I am going with Travis Kelce there over Zach Ertz.
I think that's the way to go. All right, so again, got a couple more minutes. If you guys want to get any last-minute questions, we are here. But we will now go and give our favorite cash plays. I think throwing it maybe to GPP2 over at Fantasy Sports Markets. Again, no salary cap, so you don't have to worry about trying to find the super cheap option. There's so many good plays. You want to try and find the guys that are likely to be lesser owned that you know are still going to be studs. So there's still a ton of strategy involved, even in non-salary DFS. So Fensty at the quarterback spot. There's a lot of really interesting plays. Drew Brees is probably going to be the top guy for Sunday. I think someone like, even Carson Wentz could potentially be involved if you love the game script. Cam Newton against Detroit. But the guy that I'm really intrigued by today that no one's going to be on, Matt Ryan at home against Dallas.
We've been talking about that, Ben. You and I both like the over, so over 49 points combined from these teams. That's a reason why, because Matt Ryan has been very consistent, has his options, and it's going to be a big day for the Atlanta receiving game.
Meanwhile, at the running back side, you have Ezekiel Elliott in that very matchup with an outstanding spot. Saquon Barkley is one of my cash game locks on today.
Oh, he's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
He's going to be awesome today.
And it sounds like your other cash game lock is going to be David Johnson.
It is. It is. I'm going in. I don't even think it's chasing. It's the Raiders. And that's the rule. Always attack the Raiders. Mm-hmm. You have to.
Yeah. David Johnson is absolutely in play for me if I want to go a little bit contrarian. I think maybe McCaffrey could be that guy over at Fantasy Sports Markets. James Conner is another guy you can go contrarian with, and maybe even Melvin Gordon too. As another guy that you can chase off of. I think the highest guys with highest ownership this week will be Zeke and Barkley on FSM. Would you agree with that? Wow.
And is this including Gurley or taking him out of the mix?
No, I'm saying purely for the Sunday slate.
Yes.
Okay. Wide receivers, Michael Thomas probably going to be maybe 80% owned in contests on FSM. I think him and Beckham are probably going to be the two most high-owned guys, so I think you can have a really nice leverage play with either Julio, especially if you want to pair him up with Matt Ryan. I think that's a great play. We talked about how much we love Hopkins, that people tend to overlook him. And then here's the other interesting part. You got guys like Adam Thielen, who's coming back this week from Minnesota in that game against Chicago in the slot. Tyreek Hill, he's in the money game. And then Antonio Brown, who I think has a chance to be low owned, and he's someone that usually is a lock button for me every week.
What about Odell Beckham? Do you think that the Giants...
Yeah, I think Beckham and Thomas are going to be the two highest owned players on the slate for wide receivers.
Right. Do you worry at all, though, if the Giants get out to too big of a lead that they won't target him as much and they'll just go with their ground game?
I just don't see them getting up to that big of a lead. I don't think they're that good. I think Tampa, because of how aggressive they are in the passing game, even if Fitzpatrick turns it over, I just see this being points going back and forth on both sides. So I think Beckham is probably the safest that he'll be all year. I really do believe that. And then finally at the tight end spot, and if we're looking for any sort of contrarian options at wide receiver, are you looking at Brown? Are you looking at Cooks or Evans for FSM this week?
You know what? It's very interesting to see what Antonio Brown has done to this Jacksonville team. And it's even more funny to call him contrarian. It's Antonio Brown.
I know, but that's the reality of the situation this week.
I will put trust in Antonio Brown, not over Michael Thomas or Odell Beckham Jr. or even or Hopkins for that matter.
Yeah.
But he's in that mix in the top 5 for sure.
And then finally at the tight end spot, I think especially it's Ertz or bust for this week. I don't feel comfortable going. I know Greg Olson's got a good matchup, same with O.J. Howard, but if we're talking about Sunday slate guys, it's got to be Ertz, and
yes.
That's pretty much. I could see Ertz being 100% owned in the beat Benny Heist.
Right. And again, it's just a Sunday slate, so you don't have to worry about the Kelsey situation there. So, you can't really fully trust everybody else as much as that. Ertz is just that much higher and more trustworthy.
Exactly. All right, there you guys go. That's another show for Week 11 in the books. Again, promo code NFL18. We'll get you $5 off at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Get in. I believe all 3 of our big tournaments filled the last 2 weeks. So jump in on it early over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. They're right up at the top. We got some free rolls, some smaller contests in some of our other sports today. There's NBA today, Fensty, college basketball, NHL as well. So there's so many contests for you guys to get in on. Before we let you go, Fensty, where can the people find you?
At Fensty Sports on Twitter, also on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio every single Saturday, 6 to 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Catch the show on demand with the SiriusXM app. Also for fantasy basketball purposes, fantasyalarm.com.
He's the best in the biz. He's Justin Fensterman. I'm Ben Heisler. Thank you guys for watching each week. We will be back next Sunday. It'll be a slightly smaller edition with some of the Thanksgiving games in play, but maybe we'll do a video before the week talking a little bit of the Thanksgiving matchups as well. Thank you guys for watching, for participating. We love doing this show. We love helping you guys out. Good luck in your lineups for Week 11. For Justin, I'm Ben. Be good, everybody.